now on to the broader school system. New South Wales Labor in the campaign yesterday committed $400 million to that state's school system. Still going to be a 5% gap in the school resource standard. Will the federal government, that's basically the level that was set by the Gonski approach, will the federal government step in and fill that gap of 5% funding?
Yeah, we made the commitment in the campaign to work with states and territories to get all schools to 100% of funding. You know, I want to see 100% of schools 100% funded. I welcome that announcement by Chris Minns yesterday because it gets us closer to that. The report that came out from the Productivity Commission a couple of weeks ago was blistering in its criticism of the current education agreement that the former government struck. Basically said there's no targets and there's no reforms to get us to where we need to get to.
So when will you get them?
Well, we've got that report now. We are going to set up an expert panel to give us the advice we need on what are the reforms that we need to fund to fix the problems that report identified. If you're a kid from a poor family or from the bush or an Indigenous young person, that report tells us that you're 3 times more likely to fall behind at school. So we need to make sure that we're funding schools properly. Funding's important, but what we spend it on is even more important. We've got to fund it on the things that will work. And I was heartened to see...
Are the schools, you know, in simple terms, are those schools not equipped for those additional funds to be spent?
Well, in some cases...
The ones that aren't at that 100% mark.
So I was at a school yesterday, met a teacher who told me about her boy who, by the time he was 8, couldn't read. She was a teacher. She broke down telling me this story. Went through reading recovery, still couldn't read. She used $20,000 of her own money that she got from a will from a relative who passed away to get him out of school and to fix his reading skills. Between 3rd grade and 5th grade in the NAPLAN testing, he went from flunking to succeeding. Not every parent can afford $20,000 for that small intervention in terms of one teacher and a couple of students to help them to fix their reading. Now, what was spoken about yesterday by Chris Minns, by the Premier, by Grattan, was whether we should be funding at a greater level these reading and writing tutoring programs to help kids who are falling behind to catch up. Strikes me pretty sensible. It's the sort of thing I'm talking about when I'm talking about making sure that we invest the money on reforms that are going to make a difference to the kids who need it.
The South Australian Premier committing to, or he's implementing a ban on mobile phones across schools in that state. Chris Minns committing to do the same in New South Wales if he wins.
WA, I think, as well.
Do you welcome that?
Yeah, you know, they're decisions for the state governments, but strikes me as pretty sensible. If you're looking at your phone, you're not focused on the teacher, you're not focused on learning.
So you support those moves?
Yeah, seems like a pretty sensible thing to me.
What about the, on another matter, Jim Chalmers, his essay, the values-based capitalism that he's argued for? It's caused a bit of a flurry, some suggesting
in some quarters.
It's at odds with the Hawke-Keating legacy. What do you think?
I think PJK sort of put a nail in that today, didn't he? You know, what Paul was about, what Bob was about, is about good governments working with business and with unions and the broader community to get the right outcomes. That's what Jim's about. That's what he said today in that op-ed in the Fin Review.
Now, we've seen today a bit of a... We've been talking about New South Wales a bit. It is an election campaign. Josh Landis, CEO of Clubs New South Wales, said the Premier had acted from his conservative Catholic gut rather than based on evidence when it comes to pokies. He's issued an unreserved apology, which is, I think, appropriate. Yeah. What do you make of those comments?
I think everyone would agree. I saw your interview with Michelle Rowland. It was the wrong thing to say. It's a good thing that he apologised. It's a good thing that he picked up the phone and apologised in person or on the phone.
Jason Clare, Education Minister, I appreciate your time. See you soon.
Good on you. Thanks, mate.